Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. Our special guest today is Ben Casey from Ableton. Ben, thanks for coming in, man.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back here. You brought some cool things to show us. You are demonstrating live 9.7 with push. Is that correct?
Yep. So the 9.7 beta was released recently, and it's added a ton of new features to the way push works and the integration with the computer.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away and give us a demo of what's happening with 9.7.
Cool. So first things first, we've added a bunch of new slicing options. Push already had the slice by transient option so that we could adjust the sensitivity and slices would already be created right on the downbeat within the sample. However, now in 9.7, you can also slice to beat time divisions. So if we want to automatically slice our sample up on every bar, or every 2 bars, every 4 bars. We can also slice it up in quarter notes or triplets. Triplets is especially fun to create some interesting off-kilter rhythms. And so yeah, there's slice by beat. We've also added slice by region. Slice by region is a really nice way to work with a longer sample because you can take the entire sample and automatically slice the entire sample up into whatever number of sub-slices you'd like. So you could have just 2 slices for the entire sample, or spin this right up and automatically have 32 slices for the entire sample, whatever makes sense for you. And this goes all the way up to 64 at the moment. And so we still support manual pad slicing as well. So with manual slicing, you can go through and add slices anywhere within the sample you'd like. And now in 9.7, you can also add these slices directly within Ableton Live. So you can go right into your simpler and you can just click right on the waveform and add slices at those points. And these other 2 new slicing additions also work right within simpler. So you have all these slicing options from push and directly from within Ableton Live 9.7. So next up, you've always been able to lay samples out across all 64 pads here on push to have access to rhythms and melodic elements all at one time. However, with samples on all 64 pads, it can be pretty easy to lose your place. Where did I put that particular kick drum or snare drum sound that I'm looking for? And so now, in 9.7, you can color code each of these pads, so it's easier to keep track of what sounds you have where. All I have to do is hold down the Shift key, and while Shift is held down, if I press any pad, it brings up this quick color picker here, and I can choose whatever color I'd like to assign to that pad from right there. So I could go ahead and say these 2 kick drums should be green, and maybe my snare drums, I would rather my snares be a bright red color. And if I have some melodic elements, and I want to make those yellow, I can just select them, pick a yellow color, and now I know exactly where my different sounds are located at a glance. This same color picker technique works for tracks as well. So if I want to change the color for the track itself, all I have to do is hold down Shift and select the track up here, and I can use that to choose my track color. I can also use this to change the color of clips within the session view. So if I jump over to my session view, I have a bunch of clips on this track, but they're all blue. And if I want to create some color variation there, I just hold Shift, press the clip, and pick what color I'd like it to be. And I can really rapidly use this technique to color code a bunch of clips all at one time. So next up, if I switch over to this drum rack, we've added a really nice feature of a lot of old school drum samplers. So typically with push, we can either see all 64 pads here filled with drum samples, or we can see the drum loop selector layout. And here in this layout, these 16 pads have drum sounds. These 16 pads allow me to set up a loop length, and I can have anything from a 2-bar loop to a 4-bar loop, 8 bars, all the way up to 16. Maybe I just want to select bar 3 and loop it over and over again so I can work on it. Well, we've added yet another view. So this next view, and you just push layout again, and we get to the drum velocities view. And now here in this view, these pads have my samples. These top pads work for my step sequencing. And these pads, instead of selecting a loop length, they allow me to input different velocity values. So I could pick a certain sound and then immediately have 16 different velocity levels for that same sound right here. So on some of the older samplers, you could do this, but you'd have to surrender your 16 pads. Suddenly, your 16 pads would all have the same sound across all the pads at different velocity levels. And now, with this, you can still have access to all 16 of your different sounds and quickly have access to all 16 velocities. By the way, when you choose a velocity, that's the velocity that'll get used when you step sequence above here too. So if I select a louder velocity and input some hi-hats at that louder velocity, I can then pick a softer velocity and input hi-hats using that softer velocity as well, really rapidly. So lastly, if we jump over to my fourth track here, now this is an audio track, and this is a really nice big addition because it's yet one more way to help you step away from the computer. Now, whenever I select a track and I go over to my mixer view, I'm going to go over to the individual track mixer view so that now I can see all the controls for track 4 here. And I have a new tab here for all of my inputs and outputs. And I can do all of my routing from right here on push. I don't have to go back to the software to set up any of my routing. So at the moment, we can see what my monitoring settings are. We can adjust our inputs. We can see that at the moment, I'm taking audio from my external input. We can see all of the available inputs on my computer. And we also see a real-time level meter to let me know exactly which input I want to select. And in addition to choosing all of my external inputs, I can also choose the input from any of the other built-in any other internal tracks I have here in my live set. So for example, I might want to take one of the individual sounds from one of my drum racks here. So I can, of course, select and I can see each of the individual pads from my various drum rack. Be able to pull just the clap or just the snare or just the kick out onto its own track to affect it separately. And of course, I have control over whether that signal is pre-effect, post-effect, or post-mixer. So these are just some of the major changes in the 9.7 beta. There's all sorts of fun little stuff in here as well that I'm looking forward to you guys discovering.
I hope you've enjoyed this look at Ableton Live 9.7 with Push. There's some fantastic things going on here that really let you get hands-on with your music. Ben, thanks so much for stopping by. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Hey, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.